This is one. This is one. This is one. Okay. Are you on mute?
Number two. Number two. Thank you.
Hello, testing. It's lovely to see you. Thanks for raising your hands like we were in a classroom for a moment. A little icebreaker there. I will take my mask off, I suppose. If you want to have your mask on, though, it's recommended but not required. So really up to you, however you feel comfortable. We are in the MARN Art and Culture Hub tonight, so welcome. If you haven't been here before, it's super exciting to have you here. We are officially on our second year of being in this space, or sorry, first year, second year of building out the space. And I just am honored to see the exhibition that's around us today. This is our second annual members exhibition. The first year had 51 artists represented, 64 works. There are 104 artists, 104 works in this exhibition. So I was looking for about 70 submissions, and we definitely beat that. So I can only see this as like going forward, the future of MARN and the future of Milwaukee is just growing and changing. The enthusiasm of the art community is just so exciting. So super excited that we're surrounded by all these great works. When you have a chance, we'll pull the chairs away. So if you haven't seen the exhibition tonight, I'll make sure you can see that a little bit better once the conversation ends. And we will do a Q&A starting about 7 o'clock, so please don't be shy. We are here for that, so if you have any lingering questions, that would be a great time. Otherwise, I'm sure we'll stick around for some mingling as well, so if you are a little shy, that's fine. I myself, my name is Riley Niemack. I am the gallery director, and I'm also an artist in the exhibition. My work is over there in the corner, but this talk is not about me. But if you would like to talk to me about my art, feel free to after the talk tonight. This talk will be about the theme of the exhibition, or working with a theme and concept, which is a really special conversation for me as someone who works with conceptual work or conceptual ideas. So I really am excited to hear everybody's different way of working. Each artist here honestly does a completely, at least in this exhibition, did a completely different approach to their art making and the different themes that they approached in it. So I do think it's going to be quite invigorating, if I can say so for myself. But I do just want to quickly talk about what the theme I put together for this as a prompt for people. Catch the 22 is a play on words, which I love to do. Which catch 22? You know, the paradox, the situation of being stuck with an uncertain way of which way is best to go. Maybe neither of them are great options. The reason I came up with that is because I feel like right now in the current year, we really are in a state of limbo. If I think about it, not only looking at the fact that the mask mandate just went down, but yet some of us are still wearing masks. COVID's here, but it's not here, but it is, but isn't. You know, without looking at social justice and politics on its own right, we don't need to go on that tonight, but very much a tenuous, very like high tension state that I feel like we're in right now. So Catch-22 kind of felt relevant. However, I believe and I think there is a hope that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, there's hope. So flipping it with adding the into the Catch-22, catch the 22, kind of implies a strive toward resolve, towards potentially catching it, potentially finding it out. And I think that's kind of where I feel like we're at. We're hoping, trying to figure out what the next step is. So that's a little bit about the theme. I did ask for each submission to kind of talk about how their work tied into that. Everybody has their own take. Some people were a little bit more ambiguous with it. Some people more made work specifically for it. But that's just a little insight of our conversation tonight. Now, I do want to have each person introduce themselves with their name, their pronouns, and maybe just a little bit about the piece that they're here. I can point to them myself. When we are kind of done, we can kind of point where they are in the exhibition so people can find them later. But my pronouns are she, her. Again, my name is Riley, and I'll let it go on to Izzy tonight.
I don't think my microphone, oh, there we go, sorry. My pronouns are she, her, and my piece is actually right behind Mal there. It's the pink graphic art piece.
My name is Jason. My pronouns are he, him, and I have a wooden sculpture approximately kitty corner from where I'm sitting right now. On the other side of the wall.
I was like, I'll take it, no big deal. I'm Sarah Sutterfield. My pronouns are she, her, and my piece is the metallic film piece that's on the wall with Riley's on this back wall here. Excited to be here.
Hi, I'm Roxane Mayeur. My pronouns are also she, her. My piece is right straight through there, the image with the window. Okay.
My name's Janet Schiff. My pronouns are she, her, or they, and my artwork is to your left at about 10 a.m., about there.
And with just seeing where people pointed in their description of the work, again, very different ways of working. I'm super excited for that. I do just want to touch on something here. Each of you are MARN members, and I was curious if you just wanted to speak a little bit at what it feels like to be in such a big group show with people that are all here to be a part of the community that we exist within, and maybe what brought you to be a part of MARN's community. Open floor.
I'll go first. So I'm so pleased to be part of the MARN community. I've been a member for about a year. Me and Jason were talking about that. But something that I think about is, you know, this new space is gorgeous, and it really does have a beautiful, welcoming vibe to everybody that walks in, and for members, and being part of such a large group shows that commitment of the artists in this community to be part of it. But in my past experience with MARN too, I started out in 2017 being like the curatorial mentee, and so with that program it's been really great to see like how MARN has grown from there too.
Okay. I would say one of the things I love being in membership shows, absolutely for that very reason, is the diversity, seeing the work of other artists, and especially with the theme, how that same idea can be interpreted in many different ways. I was a member of MARN a lifetime ago when MARN was just the online entity that I always found kind of the go-to when you wanted to do what am I doing this weekend kind of place. And then now that it's more of a physical entity, this is my second membership show that I'm in, and I'm also in the marketplace, and I found the people at MARN to be incredibly welcoming, and this space is, can't be in a better space, so happy to be here.
I would definitely like to say what you said too about the just diversity of people all in a single area coming up with ideas on a very similar topic. I think that's a really interesting thing about the show right here. I've been a member of MARN for approximately a year at this point, and I don't work on a canvas, so it's really interesting to see the ways that people who do work on canvases and do work with off of the canvas, how everybody comes to the same comes to different ideas on the same topic. I think it's very important for there to be a local, hyper local. I would say, MARN is exclusively to Milwaukee. When you're working in a creative community like that, then it allows you to really broaden your network and see what other people are doing and play off of each other, and I think it's a very, very important thing to have in their town.
Izzy or Janet?
So I came into MARN because I actually work for Interval Coffee, which is our little coffee shop that we have here. And I may have served you coffee or wine, and I got to make some really lovely connections with the people over the counter, and developing my skills as an artist to actually be able to share it in a way, like being in this exhibit, and that's how I became a member, and I've been a member for about 5 months now.
Awesome. Love to have you.
Yeah, I'm about at that level of membership where I found I was collaborating with a lot of members, and wasn't sure if I would be accepted as a member, and kind of took a risk, and find it very rewarding and satisfying to be collaborating, but also part of this exhibit as a new MARN member.
Awesome. Lovely to have you. Yeah, I would say your work is probably the most maybe alternative one here. It's a video with audio. I did have to mute it tonight, as you saw, but we'll put it back on so you can hear it. I want to, just since we're kind of on the topic, if you're open to it, discuss how you found your way to video making with audio, seeing that I know in your more outside of art making practice, you focus more on music.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've visual art, I guess, so I've been a photographer for 30 years.
Okay.
And I've had some pieces published. And then a few years ago, I started dabbling with moving picture, right? So a progression to video. And I've done a few music videos, actually. And I filmed a Tiny Desk concert yesterday and last year at this time. And since with my collaborations, working with other visual artists, and it just led me to maybe, I got some encouragement to pursue music and video and photography, or, submit to be in exhibitions. So I've got some encouragement over the years.
That's exciting, very much so. Yeah, if we just want to briefly just talk about each person's overarching studio practice outside of their work here, I think that'd be a great introduction, and then we can go into themes and concepts. I might just pick on you a little bit, Roxane.
Okay. Well, my studio practice is something that is evolving. I was a teacher for many years and teacher leader, and I retired just a couple of years ago. So my studio, I've been making art through the entire process, but the last couple of years have been exclusively, I am now a full-time artist, which is I'm grateful to be in that position. And my fear after all those years is, can I create on a regular basis? And it's just been night and day, and the pandemic, as much as it held back, it also worked in my favor, that it was like I could work in my basement, I worked on my porch, I worked in my backyard, and in the last couple of years I've probably created enough work to fill this space, maybe even more. So just recently I am now starting, I've got my own studio space, and I'm, just thrilled to be able to feel like this is going to be the rest of my life. I'm going to be making art and hopefully making a living making art.
Congrats.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's awesome. My studio practice is interdisciplinary, so I do sculpture, installation, and painting. And the work that I have here is very indicative of my normal studio practice, with metallic film being a material I use frequently in different colors, as well as being on an unstretched canvas where I can shape it, and the audience can see it less like a viewing field of a picture, but more of an object in itself.
My studio practice is digital art, so I am heavily inspired by children's books and graphic novels alike. That's kind of where my style comes from. I began working very heavily with digital art about 4 years ago, and my little brother's actually a big inspiration because I've been working on a children's book for him, and just like discovering that medium that way opened up the world of digital art, which is perfectionism. In my opinion, I can make it exactly how I want it, use the textures that I want, change it, adjust it, until it's exactly how I want, where like if you're working with paints, when it's on the canvas, it's on the canvas. And I think that's something a lot of artists struggle with when they're starting out, is letting go and being able to just like work with the process. I chose to not do that, and I chose to do digital art where I can erase it and change it as many times as I'd like. Yeah.
My practice is maybe a little bit different than everybody else's here, in the sense that I am a professional woodworker by trade, so I do a lot of production stuff, and there's certainly with an artistic bent to it, but a lot of production versus creative. And I've always been interested in more the fine arts direction, though, as well. And so in my time in between projects, or if I am feeling particular creative bug, I like to work and take pieces of wood that I have and assemble them in interesting ways and see what happens. I'm very interested in the way that things contrast with each other, and so just even laying things out on my bench in between projects and putting them together is something that really is a large part of my studio practice.
That was a nice ring. I do, now that we've talked about your overarching practice, if you're open to it, I'd love to get more into the exhibition that we're in today. I'm curious if each person would like to speak about, one, how they approached choosing the work that was submitted and eventually selected, and maybe the themes behind it, whether it's super related to Catch the 22 or tangential. I would just be curious to see how you approach that.
I can start. So when I saw the call, I had loose in mind. It's the title of my piece, and it's very literal. It's split down the middle with two colors, and there is a duality, right, between like pink and blue. Like people gender colors, and I love that conversation. It's not necessarily what I try to do in my practice, but when people look at it, that's the first thing they think, and I know that. So it made sense for me to pitch that in the submission, even though the work itself isn't necessarily related to duality, but it showcases that when someone sees it.
Anyway, the counterpoint duality is the entire concept behind the piece that I have here. I originally produced it for a gallery night that I was involved in back in October, and it's essentially it's a bunch of found objects, pieces of wood that I had. One of them is a piece of driftwood, one of them is a piece of a cherry burl, and another one is a piece of ebony. And there's a lot of contrast between it. And one of what really inspired me to submit that one was the idea of contrasting surfaces, or contrast is just an idea. So the natural form of the driftwood versus something that's highly produced. I took a piece of cherry wood and I put it on my lathe and spun it and stuck a knife into it and made it into this very smooth object, so that the two of them really play off of each other. And then too, there's a piece of ebony on there as well, which is extremely dark in contrast to the other pieces, which are very light. That was my general concept for the piece, and I'm very happy that it was accepted to this show, because I think in terms of duality, in terms of contrast, that's maybe one of the best pieces I've ever done, taking on those themes.
Okay, I'll go next. Mine is, my piece is maybe a little more connected to kind of a political bent, really kind of looking at what was taking place either during the pandemic and prior to the pandemic. I spent a lot of time walking around my neighborhood and around Milwaukee. One of the reasons is I have asthma, and I was protecting my lungs from, being concerned about the pandemic itself. But in my walking, I had my phone with me all the time, and I photographed my environment. And I was really kind of looking at some of the inanimate objects in the community that was ways that the community was communicating, even though we were trying to be quote unquote safer at home. And the piece that got into the show was one of a series called Sign of the Times. So it was symbols that were being used by the community, and that one's called Marking Time. And it was really kind of that piece is really kind of looking at what does safe at home mean for some people in our community. I tend to oftentimes kind of look at some of the underserved population, and it became very clear with what was going on with Black Lives Matter and what was going on with the LGBTQ community. The pandemic really kind of just really exaggerated what was going on with the differences within population. So the piece is really kind of looking at that contradiction of what does it mean to be safer at home? What does it mean to when we're all trying to deal with what's one of the most difficult times? How it becomes even harder within certain communities.
Mm-hmm. I can go. Jason, I wanted to add, my whole life is like duality. And so this was perfect. When I saw the call, I was like, I know layers are involved, getting stuck in a loop, contradiction, counterpoint, actually. So mine, as a musical piece, stands alone, but it got rejected because it was unsubmittable. So I was in Hawaii on a volcano, and I was standing there like, how can I get, into this show? I just joined MARN. I want this. This was my first call that I saw, like I'll miss a few emails here and there. And I had this revelation, how it would fit if I made my piece, which is the 18,000 photographs I took from the start of the pandemic till the day of the call. And I did a screenshot, but a video recording of all that, and then distorted it, so coming in and out of focus, going backwards sometimes, and with the rhythm of the music and all the layers, I felt like it was a pretty good first try for a submission.
Yeah, thank you for submitting and figuring that out.
Can I ask you a question real quick? What do you mean by unsubmittable, and then how did you end up submitting it to the show?
Well, it was an audio piece first, so.
The website where everything is collected for people to submit their works, it's typically working with, picture formats versus audio formats.
Visual art.
Yeah, so how did you end up submitting it?
As a video. So what I did is I took the 18,000 photographs and made a screen recording of basically, having the time to explore and take more photographs and really study subjects out in the community, in my house, small details, introspection. There's all sorts of, everything's in there. And a few flashes where things might come back into focus.
So I guess I'm hearing, and I didn't know this until just now, that the music came first, and the video kind of responded to the fact that it was going to be an exhibition, or more of a visual-based exhibition. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's exciting. Izzy, do you want to talk? Thank you. Awesome. I think the microphone might be off. Is it dead? Oh my gosh, we're just having a day with microphones. Okay. Well, thank you so much for showcasing, and I feel like I'm learning alongside the audience right now about everyone's insight into their work, so I appreciate that. I am curious if all of you typically work with a concept or theme involved, or if this was maybe your first moment, or if that just ebbs and flows with how you work. And if you do have a concept, how you approach it. Maybe it's material first for you. It sounds like it was music first. Some people have wood as a usual material that they use. Some people are like Sarah and I. Maybe we choose a material based on the concept. So I'm curious if anybody would like to answer that.
I'll go first. I'll take a whack at it. Yeah, I'm a conceptual artist. Like, it's just how it goes, right? So I do work within a material, that metallic film, a lot. And something else that kind of went with the theme in a way that I didn't really think about until now is, like, the work has a lot of optimism. And that's kind of something that, like, weaves its way through. But in the end, I use that material to remind the audience of the painting as an object, right? So I'm really talking about objects, commodities, what we think about when we make purchases. What does that mean? So I think in the end, I'm really thinking about works of art, found objects as art, and like how that means in terms of the art history that's coming out of the 80s and stuff like that too.
My process can vary. I work primarily in encaustic, which is beeswax and resin that is fused. I'll oftentimes do collage in it. I will also do various other media, kind of exploring some 3D. Sometimes it will start with the concept, and then I'll develop it. And I do tend to do series of work where there's a connected theme. But the process is never quite the same. Sometimes it's just starting off playing with the media, and then seeing where it takes me. And other times I have the idea, from the beginning. Like with this theme, this one was an easy one because I was already doing a series based on, that experience. So it can vary.
I'm surrounded by wood all the time, so that makes my that makes my choice of medium very easy. But yeah, it's glib, but it's true. But at the same time, too, there is definitely a little bit more that goes into it as well. I generally work for my professional practice on a very small scale, so I usually have very small things around. I'm often looking for things that other people would discard to be able to use into my professional practice, but then also my artistic practice as well. If I can take something that's very small that would normally end up in somebody's burn bin or the trash or something elsewhere, and take that and give it new life, regardless of whether it's something perfect and beautiful and exotic or something that's damaged and ready to be thrown away. That's something that I really enjoy doing, is finding the voice inside the material and letting it speak through me more than me making it speak in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
My process usually comes through the color palette first, because I have that freedom to kind of choose those things in between and switch around the process of it. I usually will have some colors that I'm really stuck on, which have been a lot of pinks and blues, which is why I really love your piece lately. But I'll start with that, and then I usually have like a symbol, usually animals, because I love animals, and then I tie it to whatever I'm reflecting on in that period. I'm in school for psychology and philosophy, so I have like really broad concepts that I'm digesting, and sometimes they're a lot, so I translate it through my art and like to make kind of surreal, maybe a little spiritual work. And yeah, that the process usually it starts as something else and then ends in something completely different, but that's kind of the fun of it, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can I add a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of times, like I've even performed here, and I performed live, and my music was composed here based on all these angles and the sound and the art and reverberations and the people and their outfits, or just everything is so inspiring visually. And so a lot of times my process is inspired by the visual art that I'm collaborating with. So I might not be collaborating with a particular person, but at like Milwaukee Art Museum or at MOA also, I've had the pleasure to be able to be inspired as part of my process. And then that inspires me visually, and so it's kind of a feedback cycle, which fits the theme, doesn't
a loop.
it? Mm-hmm. And there's 200 some cello loops in that piece as the audio part.
That's interesting. What's fun to hear out of everybody is that they kind of are adapting. You may have one thing, like one restriction you give yourself. It sounds like I like working with wood, or Izzy, it sounds like you really enjoy working digitally because there is a lot of give and take. You can erase, come back, layers, all of that process, but you still have a little bit of I like working with animals or symbolism. And with you, Sarah, it sounds like you're really grasping onto this shiny film, a metallic film, and kind of allowing that to be how you're starting right now. Roxane, it seems like you're really focused on this wax medium, encaustic medium, though I read your bio today that you go beyond that in your overarching practice, but that's the work I've been seeing from you lately.
It's been for the last few years.
Yeah. And obviously with you, Janet, you're kind of flowing between two, but it seems like collaboration is what's coming through overarching from what I'm hearing from you tonight. I find that restrictions sometimes give me more inspiration, which seems like a paradox in itself, speaking of paradoxes. But it's so strange, you can just give yourself I'm going to make 5 of these and they're going to have 5 colors, and how that will make your brain have so many more ideas than then sitting at a blank canvas and saying, what am I going to make today? I'm curious if any of you traditionally work with super set restrictions, or if you apply to opportunities that have restrictions in them because they give you ideas, kind of going back to school where there's prompts. If that's something you build in at all into your way of working.
I'll go first. I do tend to be really inspired by my friends and family members, so that in itself is a restriction. Like the last maybe 5 pieces that I've made are for a reason. A lot of Christmas cards, Valentine's Day cards, just things like that. So I am really driven when I have an opportunity to do something for somebody else. So like if there is a birthday coming up, it does limit what I'm going to make for it, but it inspires it in that way, especially when it's tied to someone I really care about. And I think we just went through like the big season of all of those. Working digitally means I get to make a lot of like prints and cards, and I love that medium for that reason.
It's interesting that you bring up like prompts from art school, because like when I think about my time at school, of course there were prompts, but they were also very loosey-goosey, and they're like, you know, meant for everybody who's going in a different direction to like kind of bring it to the table, like this exhibition in a way. And it's interesting because like with the year we had, it felt very restrictive, right? So I feel like in my studio practice in the past couple of years, it's changed a lot. I feel like I used to have this like order of operations, and this is how I do this, and this is how I contextualize my work, and it's kind of all gone out the window, which I almost love. And it's, for me, brought more freedom into the work, which I think allows the work to breathe a little bit more without me like carping down its throat. So I feel like I'm working right now with less restrictions, which for me is like working pretty well.
I really will set my own kind of restrictions at times. As I had said before, I was a teacher, and I was an art teacher, so I know, you know, I've spent my life around the creative process, and I know there is nothing more intimidating than the blank canvas. And so oftentimes I will, whether it's, sometimes it's music, sometimes it's just a word, or it could be a color. Oftentimes it's something that I don't like, so I want to explore why don't I use orange, you know? So then I'll use something as the catalyst to kind of start the process, and I do like entering work exhibits with themes, because it does kind of force me to take my creative process in a different direction.
Cello is all about restrictions because there's only 4 strings, you know. But also visually, I feel like, yeah, that is kind of like the blank canvas, right? Unless you've got like your subject really in mind or something. But I was kind of thinking about how when, oh shoot, I lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, pass, please.
Well, I'll go, and then maybe you can come back to it.
Okay.
Restrictions for me more come in the side of my professional practice, where I have an object that I want to make. For instance, one of the things I make the most of is I make a lot of wooden boxes, which, you know, in a certain sense is their own canvases. You can do a million different things with them out of a million different materials, but you are still confined to the object that is a box. So taking that, or, you know, talking with clients about certain pieces that they're looking for. A lot of people want reproductions of things. That's one thing, but some people say, this is what I'm looking for. These are kind of the general ideas, and then from there you can take this into an artistic perspective however you want. But just having that general restriction there of, you are making let's say a chair. You're making a chair. What do you do with that?
Think outside the box.
Think outside the chair.
I remembered what I was gonna bring up. Is that that song starts with just one note. That whole thing, the whole foundation is one note. So that's one way I've assigned. Sometimes I'll pick a few notes and just try not to deviate from those. So that's what I was gonna bring up.
Awesome. Yeah. What great insight. This is honestly, it wasn't a question that I put in my general panel questions I sent to all of you. So I'm curious if anybody has any tips and tricks on like working and how to approach things that they would give advice to anybody, knowing that we've all had our blockages, our times of creative block, or maybe even just obstacles that come with being a creative individual trying to do things with everything else going on in the world. The only one I have, which is kind of what we just hit on, is, give yourself restrictions, or sometimes working with chance is really beautiful. It allows you to stop having to make all the decisions, and then maybe you make decisions after. Does anybody else have any tips or tricks that they have just learned in their practice? Yeah.
Trying to force something is absolutely awful, and you will very often end up with something that you hate at the end of it. So don't try and force something if it's not coming to you immediately. Do what you can, and then there's no shame in putting something to the side for a while and letting yourself calm down, take a step back, and then return to it later. You're in no rush to get anything done, and you'll be happy with it. You'll be much happier with it in the long run.
Right. I mean, I think one of the best pieces of advice that I was ever given was that you just have to show up. Like, make a schedule. Show up for yourself, because at the end of the day, that's what you're doing, right? Like, you're making work. I make work for myself. I don't know about everyone else, but just you gotta schedule it in. Life gets hectic. You have families. You have a job. Who cares? Like, you gotta schedule it in. Make time for yourself, and just keep showing up. And if that day you don't create anything, like, who cares? At least you cleaned your studio. You organized your materials. I showed up. That's all you can do.
I was thinking the same thing, was to just show up. The other thing I have found is I work on more than one piece at a time, and I remind myself, this isn't precious. This is an object. I also work in a media that I can scrape back and rework and just cover the whole darn thing, turn it upside down. But to just, if I'm really frustrated on a piece, just step away from it and work on something else, and hopefully, I'll be able to come back to it with a fresh perspective. So yeah, showing up, being okay with making mistakes, because that the beauty comes from those, and getting past that precious, this material costs so much, and all, these are legitimate concerns, but at the same time, if that's in the forefront, the creativity gets squashed.
Back when I was taking Polaroids, that became a real concern.
Yeah.
But a tip for my music career is definitely get nervous later. Just push it off till later. There's some psychology involved there.
Sure.
For me, it's change your environment, which is a privilege that I have drawing on a tablet. But if I am stuck and I am in a dark room or whatever it might be, maybe go outside, go to a park, go to your super cute coffee shop in an art gallery that might inspire you, and something like that. So change your environment, loosen up a little bit.
Well, then having that kind of sounding board is always nice too. Having a friend look at what you're doing, or even a significant other who's always encouraging, usually, right? Even just tell you that what you're doing is interesting is sometimes just all you need to hear to know that what you're doing at least is coming through a little bit. So that, it's kind of beautiful. What am
too, it's also
go.
Step back from your work. I think that's
Definitely.
really important, is just to give yourself space.
And to know which friend to call when. If you need the friend that no matter what, it's is that cheerleader, or if you've got to call the one that's no, that's crap. Let's be honest. But this little part is working. So it's knowing who to call, because have a good support system, and knowing who to call when, I think, is also huge.
Well, I always go and ask my wife for, just, hey, do you like this? Do you like this with this? What are you looking at that? And she will tell me 100% if she likes things or if she doesn't like things. And it is very refreshing. I very much enjoy her eye. I will say probably 90% of the time, I'm looking for her to kind of push me into the direction that I kind of want to go, but I need to hear somebody say something on that time. The other 10% of the time I go, thanks, but you're wrong.
Yep.
That's funny, because my partner's a musician, And I ask him all the time, like, hey, what do you think about this? And all the time he's like, yeah, it looks pretty good. And it's just like,
That's not helpful at all.
okay, babe. Thanks, babe.
Yeah.
Thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, and
So,
there's
yeah.
nothing worse than false praise. Don't.
Yeah.
Please don't tell me it's great, because I know that's not what I want to hear.
He's always
right now.
like, I
Yeah.
have no idea what art is. You know, he's like, you're the artist. And I'm like, you're right. I'll go ask my art friends from college. Thanks, babe. Reaffirmed me right there. Yeah.
That's funny. Well, and it's kind of true, right? Sometimes hearing someone say something about your work will maybe make you more stubborn about why you're doing it. Maybe you're like, no, you're wrong, and this is why I'm doing it. And isn't that kind of funny?
That was not what I meant at all. Like, I very much enjoy her opinion. Sometimes I am stubborn, but she has an eye for something outside of me as the person who's doing the creative thing. I'm very stuck in this idea. It's really nice to get that idea from somebody outside of me who also does have an eye and also has like you were saying about your boyfriend, somebody who has a strong opinion versus no opinion.
Versus like, you're doing great. Like,
You're
glad you
kicking
showed up.
butt.
Glad
Great
you
job.
showed up. Yeah, thanks, son. Yeah. No, that's
Super
cool.
helpful.
That's super cool with your partner.
Yeah, my husband will also at times just say, all right, you know who you need to call.
That's nice. Yeah.
Because he knows he's kind of, when he knows he's, this is out of his depth, or I'm not going to hear what he's saying. He knows, okay. And like, yeah, I do, okay.
I know mine's good when I show my mom and she goes, oh, that's creepy. I'm like, good.
Hell
Looking
yeah.
for that.
Good. We're doing good.
So much better than cute.
That's funny. Well, yeah, and I mean, and what I was trying to get at, not speaking specifically about your partner, is critique is weird like that, where people can kind of push you, and maybe like instantly you're like, I don't agree, and then 2 hours later you're like, okay, I guess I see it now, or maybe it influences you moving in another direction. In our panel last week, I was asking a lot of questions about exhibiting work and how sometimes having your work next to another person's can completely like reshape what you contextualize your work as. Maybe you didn't think about your work relating to something that is a completely different, theme, concept, idea, coloration, process, whatever you want to call that. I think that's what's really exciting about this show is everybody was asked to respond to a theme, but none of these pieces are close to being the same. Very different approaches in general. I mean, just with these 5 right here. I did want to talk about that a little bit in terms of evolution. If there's anything that's happened in your process, if there's been a time or a memory or a moment where like you came in thinking, I'm making work about XYZ, right? But when you get out of it, you look at it and you're like, no, that's not really what I was doing here.
That was art school. That's exactly what senior thesis was. Because you're just pushed in a direction and then you just like run for the hills for it. You're like, I'm doing it. And then it gets over with and then you really have time to reflect because school is over, right? And then you're like, do I care about that concept? Was I really doing that? Like, how does that work? And I think, I've been using the metallic film since I was in college. So my evolution with that material has changed over time where I'm stretching it to in all these different directions and these capabilities of the material and what it's telling me to do, which is exciting. My work was all about like, being a woman in college, and I think that was part of me growing up, and becoming a woman. But it's since evolved into this totally other concept relating to just an object and that continuation of the art history, which is really cool. It's nice to like age and have your work age with you,
I definitely have an evolution to my work as well. Mine started as scribbles in a sketchbook that I eventually made an Instagram just to hold myself accountable of my work, to share it. And it very quickly became something I was trying to market. How can I get more likes? What can I make this? I found myself drawing a lot of watercolor baby animals, which is adorable. We love watercolor baby animals. But it didn't tie to the swirling thoughts, brain vomit, as I addressed it earlier to Mel, that's really going on in my head, and that's what I was really trying to share with my friends and family, and anybody else that was viewing my art. So I think as I let myself get into those surreal concepts, technically I became a lot better, because it's a lot harder to draw something strange and lucid and changing than it is to draw like just a very standard cute animal. And so as like my thought process evolved, my skills evolved, and now I'm somewhere in this in between. That's really great.
As I said before, I tend to kind of create in series. I don't start out with that intent, but a lot of times it just kind of evolves, and sometimes I don't even see the connection until all of a sudden I see like 3 or 4 pieces together, and it's like, oh, okay, that's what I'm saying. So yeah, sometimes it starts off, and I think that the work is about one thing, and it turns out that it's really the message that's coming through is different. And sometimes it is somebody else that looks at the work, and they're able to bring a different perspective to it, and they're able to see something, a connection that I didn't necessarily see in the making, and then it's like, oh, okay, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
It's beautiful. It's cool to see people grow and yourself grow, and or even just like you have a portfolio or work in a closet, or who knows where you put your stuff, but then to look back and like, oh, that's what I was doing, you know, even a year ago, 4 years ago. And kind of sometimes I've found that I actually go back on accident. I'm like, man, I really miss making those oil paintings, still lifes. You know, like, I don't know why, but I miss that. So there's obviously something there, and you kind of go back and you revisit different pieces you were doing, or something that you tried that you thought maybe failed a little bit or didn't achieve exactly what you were doing. Speaking about going back, or just kind of where you're at right now, I'm curious if anybody wants to speak about like maybe what they're going for. Maybe it's in your practice, or a new piece that you're making, or a new collaboration you're starting. Does anybody want to talk about next steps? What's your future maybe goals?
I'll start. So in a few capacities, the piece that's in this exhibition is one of the smallest that I make now, which is like a big achievement for me. So I've been scaling up, which is excellent. Like, it's been a goal, it happened, and I conquered it. Now it's like, how big can I go? And I do have a collaboration starting actually with another artist, Allie Smith, who's actually in the crowd right now. Hi, Allie. And she's an amazing painter. Don't sleep on Allie Smith. But we're going to be collaborating, and we're just like, we made a concept for an exhibition, and we're just pitching it to a ton of galleries, and we'll see what happens.
That's exciting.
Yeah, I'm starting on a similar thing. A friend of mine invited me to show in his gallery for the upcoming gallery night, just a couple blocks from here over at the Marshall Building, and he works in ceramics, and I said, only if we can do a collaborative piece, if you can build a three-dimensional form and I can do my encaustic. And so I just got that piece from him yesterday, and I'm pretty excited because I wanted to start doing more 3D, so this became this wonderful opportunity to get past the building the form for the first one and just really kind of look at my work, look at his work, and see how I can kind of create this visual connection. So, and also working larger now that I have a studio space, I could work big. Yeah. Does. Yeah.
I got like 4 things right now I'm working on. A whole new set of recordings, but also working on some more video. I'm collaborating with another MARN member, Luna, Renee Bebo. Bebo. She's a painter, and so we've collaborated together. But also working on the psychotherapy and music and art. I was actually approved to do music and art therapy and psychotherapy. So that's a development, definitely.
We'll have to talk because I have an art therapy background too.
There you go.
Congratulations.
Yes,
Now.
lots of projects.
And then you with
going
psychology.
on.
Can I volunteer for you?
I need an intern.
There you go.
On my end, basically continuing to improve my craft and continuing to make things for people that are both functional but also artistic. That would be an ideal thing for this coming year. I'm about to hit the 1 year mark of me being solo and full time, and I took a jump on that last year without really having any kind of plan, and it's been definitely a lot of work, but it's been working out so far, which I'm extremely happy about. But one of the things that I'm interested really in doing this year is, last year I put together this gallery back in October, just single gallery night, and looking to do it about twice a year, focusing, again, hyper specifically in Milwaukee on artists who work outside of the canvas, people who do metal smithing, people who do sculpture, people who do woodwork, fashion design, things like that, ceramics, things like that, because there are so many different gallery nights in our city, and they're very much focused on things that are on canvases, which is absolutely fantastic, but we don't see a ton of gallery nights that focus in on something like that, and so that's something that I'm trying to bring to the community, and just show off that there are other people in the area who do this, who do things like that, on an every single day basis.
What's the name of your gallery?
I don't have a gallery.
Okay, you're...
We called it. We've done one of them so far. We're looking at possibly doing them about twice a year, called the Modern Milwaukee series, portraits from outside of the canvas, and we had it over at the Magnet Factory last time, if you know that one, over in Bayview.
Yeah.
So wonderful space. Michael's an absolutely incredible human being. So
Awesome. So is there one to look forward to, I guess?
it's being scheduled right now.
Scheduled, okay.
We'll find out.
Okay. To be determined.
I'm working on a collection of my pieces. It's only been about a year that I actually have kind of like a set style. I know that artists always kind of strain themselves on that of like, what is my style? What is the thing that separates me from everybody else? Even more so digitally, because you can create anything and everything. So I feel like I've really found my sweet spot, and now I'm working to have a cohesive collection that I hope to upload as NFTs, prints, really hone in and make it physical, because I love working digitally, but one of the things is, it's like when you have a book and you want to smell it. I want to make it physical. I want to be able to hold it and put it on my walls. So that's where I'm at right now.
That's exciting. Cool. Well, we are getting closer to our time here. We have about 5 minutes. I can let anybody have some final words, but I am going to just do a cheesy prompt real quick. How are you trying to catch the 22?
Yikes. I don't mean to be like yikes, but it's
It's cheesy, it's fine.
but it's not the question, but it's just like, yeah, it's a big ask. I guess that's what my response was. It's a big ask. Like, how, I think with these times, they're hard, so the outlet is the creation in some way. If I can just like keep to my studio practice and like keep making, that's probably how I'm catching.
Mine is almost the opposite. Is I've definitely got the practice and the desire to keep making, but mine is really more about stepping outside of my comfort zone and doing something like this, coming in and speaking publicly, but also just really understanding that for many artists, and myself included, the business end is the part that goes to the back. So now it's to try to get that to be a part of my practice too, networking and getting out and making connections now that it's getting closer and safer to do that, hopefully.
Yeah.
So.
I agree with that. I also want to just throw myself out there, and terrified as it might be, just do it, get through it.
You gotta do it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I needed this this exhibition, the challenge, to get out, to kind of stick a wedge in my cycle, and get myself out as a multimedia artist.
I have no idea.
That's okay.
I will
See, that's
be-
my
I will be-
initial.
There's a million
Fair
different
enough.
things I could say. I have no idea.
nothing quite encapsulates like the feeling of trying to take back control, right? Like our
Control's
lives
an
right
interesting
now?
way of
Take
putting
it back
that.
assumes you had it.
Yeah, taking back control is an interesting way of putting that.
I'm thinking about it in terms of like COVID too,
I
and
think,
about like
I
our
think that
lives.
that's
yeah.
Riley. That's something that I don't think I can sum up in a short sentence. I think that's
Right.
something where I would have to sit down and talk about that for an hour with somebody in a face-to-face engaged conversation.
Totally valid. I don't actually even know the answer to my question, but I know my goals for this year, which is one of them, is like just, again, dedicating time to my studio and re-engaging that I am a creative person in pursuits of my own visions outside of supporting people, which I love to support. I love the platform that we're building here. So I guess that is me, my trying to find a resolve for myself, time and space and energy in an outlet. But again, I'm sure if I sat down, I could write a whole essay about that. So.
That'd be actually really good, Riley, especially like as someone who's a gallery director. It is hard to find your studio practice again for yourself. Like as someone who curates, it's hard.
Well, and then for each person here that is an artist and creative in their own right, you know, it can be difficult sometimes to remind yourself again to make that time, step away, find the energy that you out of the bottomless pit that you maybe don't have, or and then hopefully it sounds like Roxane and you, Jason, and you, Janet, even it sounds like you three have finally maybe found the way where your pursuit is your practice, or at least part majorly focus in that, and that is just an achievement that I'm so happy for you three.
Wonderfully scary, yeah.
Yeah.
I think artists' brains are broken in a way that most people's aren't, in that, you know, everybody has a million different thoughts inside their head at any point in time, but I feel like a lot of people are able to focus very, very well on something and maybe not let the fact that there are billions of thoughts inside your head overtake you. And that's something that we as artists, from one day to the next, we can be extremely hyper-focused on one idea, and then the next day, you know, you're lost in a million different ideas, and kind of trying to parse the two of those things out is one of our central struggles.
Well said.
That was very well said.
Well said. Yeah, let's snap for
Got
that.
that recorded, right?
Thanks.
Going on there, yeah.
Those are hashtag facts.
All right, that's enough. I don't like praise, so.
Well, wow, we're 7 on the dot. Does anybody have any last words they'd like to share before we go to a little bit of a Q&A, potentially with the audience? No? Awesome. Well, thank you all for being here. Does anybody have any? Yeah.
Good.
Well, I want to thank you all for the affirmations. I have a lot of the things that you said were affirming, and a lot of the things that you said were also very encouraging, and I also feel like a giant kick in the tush to really start putting this time on my calendar instead of going, oh, I didn't have time to do that today, and having people ask, when are you going to start doing such and such? So thank you for the kick in the ass and for the affirmations about that my brain is jacked up, and that's okay.
That's what we're here for.
But my question is, yeah, right? I'm not broken. My brain is. It's all right.
It's all good. You just gotta roll with it.
But my question to you, and you all kind of, I think, answered it a little bit, but not quite. And that is, how did COVID, I'm sure it did, but how did it change your process? And how did it change, or did it change your focus and what your work looks like? And I guess coming at it for me, being a person who is extroverted in that I get energy from being around people, and I'm an external processor, which is why I haven't put this question together really well at this point. Being so isolated for so long, and any connection having come through in a digital manner was just absolutely crushing and mind-numbing and horribly awful. And so my work suffered tremendously. I'm wondering how you all have come out on the other end, and if your process changed in all of that.
That's so interesting. I also identify as an extrovert. However, when I'm in an external setting like a gallery and I see tons of work around me, I think that's when I get in my shell and I'm like, I don't want to create. Nope, I'm done. it's over. And I think COVID for me helped me be like, oh, well, I can't go out and see anybody's shows. It's all digital. How can I be more insular in my practice within myself? Like, how can I make work, especially for me now? And COVID life things happened. I like had a move change, and then that forced me to get a studio, and then getting the studio led to making larger work, and all these kind of next steps started happening where it was like, that's how it changed. My work is for the better almost. That was my experience. I feel like everyone will have a different one.
Yeah, for me, it actually exploded my work because I work digitally. So there was never a bigger spotlight for an artist in my medium, and it pushed me to create every single week a new piece. I also was unable to lie to myself about the things I would do if I had more time, because I had nothing but time.
That's hashtag
That's a lesson I learned.
My experience was the same. I'm an introvert, and there was a strange comfort in being in quarantine. I didn't have to worry about people stopping by. So I just went on a ridiculous creative spurt. The laundry didn't get done. Sometimes I ate like at whatever time, because time didn't matter. But as we were starting to come out, that's when I had to realize that, again, what I talked about, my bigger fear now is not, can I make art? It's like, now what do I do with it? How do I take what I'm making and how do I represent myself? Where do I represent myself? And what's next? Yeah.
The pandemic wasn't great.
The statement of the century.
Great start. For a large section of 2020 and 2021, I didn't notice the pandemic because I was running a manufacturing facility at the time and working 10+ hour days, 5+ days a week, and essentially. The buck stopped with me. I was the supervisor of my position and just basically cranking stuff out. Everybody else's jobs, people got laid off, people's things got slowed down, people had to transition to this new reality of working from home. And my reality was that I started working longer hours than I ever had in my life, working for somebody else. And then the situation that I was working in was also not particularly ideal, filled with people who I did not necessarily get along with ideologically, and the pandemic and especially the Black Lives Matter movement of 2020 really pushed that to an extreme, to the point where those were things that were significant reasons for me leaving manufacturing, which the job that I had, I extremely enjoyed. What it was I was doing, I just did not enjoy where I was doing it at. And so, yeah, the rhetoric surrounding the pandemic, and especially that around the Black Lives Matter movement, pushed me into taking the leap to go solo. And, yeah.
You're here, you did it.
I guess, thank you.
That's the thing is the pandemic also taught us what did you say? The buck stops here? With yourself too. And it's like, am I happy? Am I not happy? You reassess your life and then you change it.
You got one life, and I do not want to be spending it, making somebody else who, if I did not work for them, I would want to just, deflate the tires on their car.
Right. Right. Hashtag
I
facts.
do not want to spend any more time with these people than I have to.
I think we have a theme, everybody. Hashtag facts. Yeah. That's awesome.
Great hair, by the way. It's just
gorgeous. Yes.
Does anybody else have a question they'd like to ask?
That was a question.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
What inspired you to develop the theme of Catch the 22?
Oh, yeah. One of my goals here, being the gallery director, is to make sure we're staying, at least I'm trying to have relevant work here, work that's at least responding to the world we live in without it hitting it straight on the nose. Last year, the title was 2022.0, a year in translation, because I feel like we really didn't have a 2020, so it was like a rebooting 2.0 style. This one, I was kind of reflecting on what 2022 meant for me, and like I said, it kind of felt like I was in a limbo state. Like, well, what is this? Did I just lose 2 years of my life? Kind of, honestly. I feel like I aged 2 years without ever actually like aging 2 years. I don't know. Lost a lot of time. I was laid off for, 6 months, I think. So there was a whole lot of time where I was not being productive with it, but I reassessed. So that's kind of where I ended up being, is like this point of paradox of like, it's 2 years later, but yet I don't feel like it's 2 years later. What did I lose? Where am I? The fact that we made art in general in 2 years is like amazing, persisting and still being a creative and not just letting that completely lose itself. So that's kind of where it started. I was also just playing with words, 2022.
Love
also
that.
had 22 happen this past month. So I know my coworker Nicole was here, I think she might have left. We were like Googling different terms with two involved, and Catch 22 came up, and I couldn't just stick with it saying Catch 22. I had to put a "the" in there, so.
Love it. Love that.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Anybody else have a question? I will also allow one of our team members ask a question if they so choose. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Marn.
Thank
It's
you
nice
guys for
of you.
being here.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Luke.
thank you
Thank
for
you,
having us.
everybody.
Thank you. Yeah.